Have you ever wondered what really went on behind closed doors in Janet Jackson's whirlwind romance with billionaire businessman Wasam Almana? People saw the lavish lifestyle, the international travel, and the sleek public appearances. But beneath the glamour, there were whispers of deep-seated tension, secret contracts, and an undercurrent of control so unsettling that even her own family begged her to walk away. Today, we're diving headfirst into the details that Janet tried to keep hidden, from the shocking cultural compromises she made to the very real possibility that she stayed married just long enough to claim a massive financial settlement. It's a story full of twists that only get more intense the deeper you look. So brace yourself for a ride through the hidden cracks of a union that left both fans and insiders stunned. Janet Jackson wasn't a newcomer to romantic drama before she met Wasam Almana. In fact, her history of high-profile relationships and secret marriages had already sparked countless rumors over the years. But it gets crazier when you consider how quickly she seemed to fall for Wasam's poised charm, his billionaire status, and his promise of building a family guided by traditional values. From the outside, friends thought Janet was finally finding stability after so many ups and downs, especially when she quietly tied the knot in 2012, away from flashing cameras and intrusive headlines. She had been a global superstar with decades in the limelight, while Wasam was a Qatari magnate who, at least at first, appeared perfectly confident being in her shadow. Yet people who knew Janet closely say there was something off from the very beginning. Decisions that she would usually think twice about suddenly got a swift yes, and she started pulling back from the extended Jackson family, who had always been her backbone. The question everyone kept asking was, did she give up her independence, or was she... Family members and close friends claimed they raised red flags from the outset, warning Janet that Wasam's beliefs might clash too strongly with her own flamboyant personality and showbiz traditions. But listen to this, even those who were on board with her marriage to Wasam admit that the speed with which she changed, covering herself head to toe in conservative clothing, canceling tours at the last minute, was alarming. Janet was always the kind of performer who blurred the lines, pushed boundaries, and owned her stage presence. Suddenly, she was rehearsing in baggy outfits, turning her face away from cameras in public, and peppering her lyrics with religious references that seemed forced. According to whispers in the industry, she confided in a couple of close assistants that she was constantly worried about embarrassing her husband, who insisted on controlling her image to maintain his family's honor. Some folks say the shift was a deliberate choice on Janet's part. After all, she'd spent so many years pushing the envelope. Maybe she was simply ready for a calmer, more private life. But here's the kicker. Janet's mother and siblings weren't convinced this was normal newlywed behavior. In interviews and personal conversations, they hinted that Wasam was pressuring Janet to conform to an extremely strict household. Even her sister LaToya commented she had no idea Janet was even married until she read it in the headlines, a curious detail that points to total secrecy. The Jacksons, known for their own complicated family dynamics, were stunned to see Janet backing out of familial events and spending more and more time overseas, in places where neither paparazzi nor her relatives could easily reach her. The more questions they asked, the fewer answers they got. Soon enough, it became obvious. Something was pushing Janet further and further from the people she cared about. Once their son, Isa, arrived in January 2017, everything changed again. Normally, a newborn might bring loved ones closer, but rumors suggest Wasam doubled down on the rules, limiting visits and restricting any outside influence he deemed inappropriate for his family. But that's not all. Janet's own brother, Randy Jackson, was so concerned about her mental and emotional state that he publicly stated she felt like a prisoner in her own home. Janet was no stranger to intense personal turmoil, but hearing it from Randy, a family member who rarely courts drama, raised serious eyebrows. He mentioned vicious verbal insults, daily negativity, and a creeping sense that Janet wasn't free to travel, perform, or even have an identity outside of Wasam's expectations. Critics argued that Randy was exaggerating, but those who'd followed Janet's career knew she'd never canceled shows or gone off the grid so abruptly without good reason. The stories around the new mother's isolation took an even darker tone when close friends began whispering that Wasam wanted to limit Janet's contact with her support system entirely. Reports emerged about her canceled European tour dates, her abrupt shift in music, and her near disappearance from public events. But listen to this. One of the most jolting moments was when Janet allegedly reached a point of desperation and ended up calling the authorities to check on her son while he was with Wasam, an incident that lit up social media with speculation. Gossip sites claimed the nanny had sounded the alarm, describing Wasam's behavior as aggressive or potentially dangerous. Wasam's camp denied it, calling the allegations deeply hurtful and painting Janet's requests as overblown hysteria or emotional stress. No matter where the truth lies, the entire saga sent a clear signal. Peace and harmony were far from their mansion's front doors, and Janet was caught in the middle. Then came the rumor that really lit a fire under the tabloids. The idea that Janet was contractually bound to stay in the marriage for at least 5 years. Supposedly, the couple's prenup included clauses that unlocked a monumental sum. Some said $100 million for 5 years of matrimony, plus another $100 million for giving birth to a son. But it gets worse. The moment she hit the 5-year mark and secured both the time requirement and the child requirement, cracks in the marriage became impossible to ignore. From the outside, it was almost too coincidental to overlook. Detractors argued she'd basically orchestrated the entire relationship to pocket a fortune, whereas supporters insisted no amount of money could make someone endure a toxic situation for half a decade if it was truly unbearable. The reality may sit somewhere in between, but the sheer existence of that rumored prenup added another electrifying dimension to the drama and to the question of who was really using whom. But if you think Janet's entire love story is defined by Wasam, you'd be forgetting she had a whole roller coaster of relationships before him. From James DeBarge to Renee Elizondo Jr., from Jermaine Dupri to rumored dalliances with high-profile celebrities, Janet's personal life has never been short on twists. But it gets crazier when you realize a pattern. These romances often start with massive passion, secrecy, and a sense that Janet is seeking something she can't quite find anywhere else. Fans have debated for years whether it's the shadow of her father Joe Jackson's controlling ways that makes her cling to men who promise structure, or if it's her iconic status as a performer that pushes potential partners away. Either way, each relationship seemed to crumble under a unique set of pressures: addiction issues, controlling behavior, or simple incompatibility. When the Wasam relationship came crashing down, those who'd watched this pattern unfold weren't entirely surprised, but they were deeply concerned by just how extreme the allegations had become this time around. Behind the scenes, insiders talk about the emotional toll these repeated breakups have inflicted on Janet. They say she's never fully recovered from her early experiences with controlling men, especially given that her father was notoriously strict. People who've glimpsed her private moments describe a star who yearns for genuine love yet carries fears of betrayal, heartbreak, and being used for her fame and fortune. But listen to this. During the darkest days of her marriage to Wasam, she reportedly told a friend that she felt she was losing her identity. No longer the fiercely independent force behind hits like Rhythm Nation, she worried she'd become someone unrecognizable in her quest to be the perfect wife. It's a chilling thought, especially considering Janet's entire brand is built on empowerment, sexual autonomy, and artistic freedom. To see her struggling in a private world of constraints left many fans and loved ones stunned, and more determined to help her break free. The custody battle over Isa added yet another layer of complexity. Most parents want the best for their child, but in cross-cultural separations, disputes can become tangled in traditions, legal frameworks, and drastically different beliefs on child rearing. But that's not all. Rumors circulated that Wasam preferred raising Isa far from the spotlight, going so far as to keep him away from social gatherings and, by extension, from Janet's more extroverted relatives. Sources say Janet desperately wanted her son to know the warmth of the Jackson family, especially her mother, Catherine, who was advancing in age. But bridging these desires with Wasam's strict perspective seemed nearly impossible. The fact that Janet had to call the cops to check on her baby at least once shows how the tension escalated. Even though official statements tried to tone down the drama, the alarm bells had already rung. What began as a cultural clash looked more like a fundamental deadlock over Isa's well-being, fueling the separation's urgency. After the dust settled on their split, Wasam's public response offered a stark contrast to the accusations swirling around him. He posted a passage from the Quran on his website, hinting at patience in adversity and trials of faith, and he added a heartfelt note professing his enduring love for Janet. But it gets even more complicated when you recall Randy Jackson's explicit claims that Wasam was insulting Janet daily, calling her names and eroding her self-worth. The two versions of reality couldn't be more different. One painted Wasam as a gentle, misunderstood husband trying to protect his family's honor, while the other depicted him as a controlling figure who systematically broke Janet down. Without definitive proof, the debate raged on. But the fact that Janet rarely contradicted her brother's statements fueled suspicions that his story was closer to the truth than Wasam's. It was as if the final word for most observers was that the marriage was toxic through and through. In the end, it's hard to say whether Janet Jackson was genuinely trapped by a spouse who chipped away at her freedom, or if she simply orchestrated her exit at a financially opportune moment. The truth could be a complicated blend of both. She'd already endured multiple heartbreaks long before Wasam came along, and each new relationship carried baggage from the one before. What we do know is that the allegations of control, verbal mistreatment, and total isolation weren't fabricated from thin air. Her family and close friends seemed genuinely alarmed. Yet those multi-million-dollar prenup rumors still raise eyebrows, making it impossible to ignore the possibility that she saw a light at the end of the tunnel in more ways than one. Ultimately, the only people who truly know what happened are Janet and Wasam themselves, and even they may see the events through vastly different lenses. So, is she a victim of toxic circumstances, a savvy negotiator protecting her future, or simply a woman who's navigated the ups and downs of love in front of the entire world? That, my friends, is for you to decide. Now, it's your turn. Drop your thoughts in the comments below, and let's hear what you believe really went on behind the scenes of one of the most contentious celebrity relationships in recent memory.